Call this morning meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Please stand for the pledge. Mr. Gray.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call roll, please.
Chair Cochran,
I am here.
Co-Chair Craig,
Present.
Commissioner Rule, Commissioner Bartholomew,
Here.
Commissioner Swanson told us he would be absent this month, Commissioner Pestinger, and Commissioner Bush.
Here.
Roll is complete. We have a quorum.
I think Dan was the only one that said he was gonna not be here. You heard from Joe or Chris?
Not from Joe or Chris, no.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Craig, I move that we excuse Commissioner Swanson since he made arrangements in advance.
Do I hear a second?
Erica, I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So carried. Okay, looking at the agenda, is there any additions or removals of the topic?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Craig, hearing nothing, I move the agenda be approved as printed.
Erica, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So carried. Public comment, I don't see anybody in the audience, but I'll read it anyway. Comments may be sent to the Planning Commission Secretary Danielle Churchenko at clerk@cityofording.org by 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting and will be read into the record at the meeting. In the case of a question, the chair will refer the matter to the appropriate administrative staff member. Comments that come in after the deadline will be read into the record at the next Planning Commission meeting. Moving right along, minutes for the meeting for June. Has everyone had a chance to read it? And is there any additions or corrections? I don't think I saw anything. See any notes?
I didn't. Madam Chair, Commissioner Craig, hearing nothing from anyone, I move approval of the minutes as printed.
Richard was second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So carried. We are, wow, all the way up to old business already. AB 25-20, Ording Municipal Code Update. I think we are on Title 15. And it must be your job, yeah.
Part 2 of 2, Title 15. Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll take this one. We're here tonight for a presentation of some draft edits that staff has made in coordination with an interdisciplinary administrative staff on our side, in addition to consultation with JC, our city engineer, and with our city attorneys. This is for the second half of Title 15, chapters 8 through 15. I'll again reiterate that these are draft materials. They may still change a little bit before they come before the Planning Commission. It's laid out in your packets. We expect to be presenting most of the titles for titles 12, 13, and 15, because those are legislative action items under a Type 5 permit, before the Planning Commission September 2nd. So we will have a fairly hefty agenda item on us in front of us that evening, and we still have to review Title 13 before that. But we'll be here on that evening to have a public hearing as our intended schedule for that matter. In which case we'll review more fully the refined draft version of this title that's in front of you tonight, in addition to 12 subdivisions and 13, the General Development Code. And so we were here last month. We reviewed the first half of Title 15. I tried to take a couple of notes on things that are in front of you in the packet tonight that I think are a bit more interesting or consequential. In truth, I don't. Oh,
On the schedule, you have this tonight, and then in August, Title 13. And then August fifth, is that a city council meeting?
That's a CGA meeting.
Okay.
Apologies.
Yes, and, September 4th, we don't go on Tuesday, we go on Thursday, that's the same week. It says
Oh,
4th in here, you just.
my
said two,
mistake.
doesn't matter.
Right, Labor Day, yeah.
But it says that we're just reviewing Title 13, but you're saying we're seeing all of them that night?
Right. I'm sorry if I missed that in your packet. That would have been a mistake. Let me get to that.
You're gonna see 13, 15, and what else?
12.
12, 15.
Right. So I think that what I actually have written down in my office that I forgot to translate over here is that we'll be doing Title 13 in totality in August.
And so that'll be the final there.
Right. So that'll be the last sort of like workshopping session. And then we'll be back in September. And this is all in an effort again to try and be able to get this across the finish line this year. It's been a council goal of ours. It's a pretty hefty ask. But it's been a council goal that was established in 2025 to have the municipal code updated before the end of the year. And so to be able to facilitate the requisite amount of times to be able to get it through commerce and SEPA and then through a hearing here and then through a hearing at council. We have to, have a busy August reviewing Title 13 and then a public hearing in September.
The September 5th meeting, is that another CGA meeting? On the 5th?
I'm sorry, that's not even a meeting. That's just an indication for me to be able to issue, if I haven't already, to issue a SEPA threshold determination.
And then we're having a public hearing on the 3 titles at our October meeting, correct?
September meeting.
Oh, because this is
Right.
for 6. So we've moved that to
To September, yeah, to be able.
do a final review of everything. Okay, hold on.
Yeah, I should have done a better job of editing this schedule. It has changed a number of times as well. My apologies for that. It's at
So October, we've got something on the platter for October 6th?
actually right now, October doesn't look like there's anything from a legislative perspective for this planning commission. I think that after September, the calendar gets pretty light for this planning commission.
Thanks for that clarification.
Sure, yeah,
I'm thinking, oh, wait, I'm off here.
no, I allowed there I allowed some remnant errors to go into your packet. My mistake for that. The good news is that you can look forward to a easy Q4 maybe.
Garrett, don't say that.
So I'll dive back in to where I had left off. So if we look, I don't think that there's a lot that is really too consequential to the planning commission's role necessarily in the latter half of Title 15. I've taken a couple of notes down for a few things that are just noteworthy to make mention of. And then just as we have all along, I'll turn it over to the commission to address any questions that you had or thoughts as you're moving through the content. I'll start with Title 15, Chapter 8. That's page 7 of your packets. The only point that I'll make about this is our code governing concurrency and adequacy. And so there are a few edits that have been made here that are necessary for some, code cleanup that right now has codified some errors. But more than that, there might be a couple more edits that are made to this that you see in a couple of months. It'll be reviewed again by JC and by Public Works Director. And so after they give it their last kind of polish, there may be a couple more edits that you could expect to see on this one, just to ensure that the concurrency is aligned with what Public Works would expect to see. If you jump forward to page 16 of your packet, that's chapter 10 that governs appeals. This is recently, and I mean, as of last week, this has been discussed at more length with the city attorney. And so there will be some more edits that are made to Title 15 into this chapter for the portion governing appeals. And the reason why is because, like I said, just last week got really full good guidance from the city attorney on our current appeals procedure. There's a lot of inconsistencies in our code right now about who an appeal body is and, the procedures about going forward with an appeal and, sort of the circumstances around that. There's a lot of inconsistencies in our code. And so we know that we need to clean that up and create consistency throughout. We also know that right now there are a lot of assignments of the city council being a hearing body. And it's been her consistent advisement that that not be the case, that the most appropriate way to be able to move through appeals on development permit applications and legislative items is through a quasi judicial proceedings. Eventually, the end hearing body for something, if you were to take an appeal all the way through to its very end, would be what's called a LUPA appeal, a Land Use Petition Act appeal, and that gets heard by Pierce County Superior Court. And so to be able to, ensure that we're, working within our practice of a separation of powers doctrine, and that we're assigning a hearing review body that is trained and appropriate for that, is the city's intention to prepare draft edits to this chapter and to the entire title that refers appeals matters to our hearing examiner. And then if anybody wanted to appeal the decision by the hearing examiner, it would stay in the quasi judicial realm of the separation of powers, moving forward to Pierce County Superior Court. So those are some cleanup edits that'll need to come back and be made in this chapter. So just so you know, you'll see those in a couple of months when we're back here for the public hearing. Yeah.
On 15-10-2, you added and decision to appeal a planning commission recommendation. Should not the statement below, recommendations and decisions of the planning commission may be appealed?
Recommendations and
Because right now
decisions.
it
Yeah.
says recommendation of the planning commission,
Yeah.
but if you're adding and decision, it probably should be decisions and recommendations and decisions down below as well.
Yeah. I see that. Thank you. Good note. I'll make that edit. Okay. And then the only other two things that really struck me that I thought would be noteworthy for the planning commission tonight, those are on pages 23 and 24 of your packet. Just as some examples of some kind of overdue cleanup that we have definitely been facing as we're moving through this exercise. It is a big one. Nobody here is surprised by that. But here on page 23, in the section that says adoption by city council, we cleaned up this language because right now this discusses code text amendments. So when a code text amendment comes before the city, the process that it goes through, it's a type 5 application. So I present it to the planning commission at a public hearing, and then it goes to city council after planning commission has issued a recommendation at the public hearing. The way that this code is written right now obligates the council to just adopt whatever the planning commission recommendation is. That's not appropriate. It's not an expectation that we have of the city council. And so, right now what it says is amendments to the development regulations or other official controls shall be adopted by the city council by ordinance after a public hearing. And that's just, it's not an appropriate way to go about viewing the role of the city council or how it is that the hearing is going to I guess, be
Well, they ignored that.
administered. What's that?
Say they ignored that. They didn't pay.
Right, exactly. It's not something that we enact by
I
practice.
didn't know that.
We
you
wouldn't
did that 'cause
expect it.
We just always, it's a recommendation.
It's just right. And so the way that it's written right now with this kind of obligatory statement for the council, it just needs to be cleaned up. It's not right. You can see another example of that on the next page. There is some discussion of a comprehensive plan docketing process. This is something that I don't know that anybody in Ording has ever taken advantage of, but we do have a codified docketing process where somebody can choose any member of the public within the first couple of months of every calendar year to approach the city council and request for an amendment to the comprehensive plan to be moved onto a docket for the year to be reviewed by the council. But there is a tremendous amount of lacking regulatory guidance or direction in the code around how that's supposed to be structured. So far, Scott and I have just kind of made up what we think is a, true and defensible with a straight face sort of procedure and advertise the opportunity to the public. But we really don't have any sort of expectation or direction that's codified around that docketing process. And that's a large hole in our code that is deserving of some rewrite. So these are the sorts of things I just wanted to point out these examples. we administer this code every day, and we take down these notes over the course of months and years, or of things that we've just challenges that we've run into, or we recognize that there are difficulty or even impossibility in being able to cleanly administer our code and have clear direction for the public and for staff to be able to understand what the expectation is. And so these are the sorts of, this is the sort of thing that you'll see, throughout this endeavor to all of the titles, but tonight's material as well. It's just an effort to kind of rectify what staff have understood to be challenges in administering our own code. With that, I know very well this planning commission has reviewed every word of this packet, and I'll turn it over for any questions.
We have had people come forward, not necessarily to change the comp plan, but almost always we've had several people that come and wanted to change the zone that they lived in. And that's probably the only, contribution from the public as far as the comp plan was zoning issues and to change the zone that they lived in.
Right.
But yeah, I didn't realize that the wording, didn't read that. They just showed up, so we just listened.
Like you
to
said, it's not exactly followed, but it still
Yeah.
should be cleaned up.
On page 12, you use that word, the LUPA, L-U-P-A. What does LUPA stand for?
Land Use Petition Act.
Petition Act. Okay.
Like the final appeal for a development decision.
Right. Exactly.
Have we ever done that before? Send that so that it ends up in the Superior Court?
Well, it kind of goes a little bit differently. So typically the city is not an appellant body. We're not the appellant. And so, usually how it might manifest here in Ording is, let's say that I take somebody's applied for a variance application, I've reviewed it, and I've taken it to the hearing examiner, and I've said, Mr. Examiner, here's the variance application, here's the recommendation, and the hearing examiner gives an answer that the applicant doesn't like. Maybe he denies it. The applicant has the ability to appeal the hearing examiner's decision to the next appellant body level, which would be LUPA, Pierce County Superior Court. I can't think of an example that I've even heard of where that's happened in Ording. They're really rare. Right now, the way that it had previously been written was that it would move from the hearing examiner then to city council.
Yeah, I
as
think
the
everything
appeal.
went to City Council.
Right.
That church issue. That
Right.
was over.
That it went to city council as the appeals body. Right. But there's a lot of issues with that. And our city attorney gave a long list of them. One is that the city council doesn't undergo any sort of training for how to be an appeals body, how to hold an appeals hearing. Another is that there's a real issue with the separation of powers doctrine. Another issue is that a city council is an elected body, and so they could be coerced or, in some way, kind of pushed along toward a certain decision based on their constituency. They're subject to influence because they're an elected body. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why the general guidance is that council members should not be hearing appeals to land use decisions or development decisions or things like that have otherwise been decided on by a hearing examiner who is practiced in being able to administer those decisions. Instead, it should move to another practicing body that is trained in how to do that, which is Superior Court.
I think that's just a holdover from the, little town thing.
Yeah, that
'Cause for
might
the
be the
I
case.
told you when I first started on the planning commission, we were the Board of Adjustment, and we were the hearing examiner.
Right.
And so we made decisions, and, and we had, we did take a little mini course on, what we were supposed to do and not do, and, what was the name of that book? Shoot. No, you can get it from the municipal library. Now, we used to make copies for everybody so they could read through it and understand, what you're not supposed to say, what you can say, what you can discuss. But yeah, I mean, I was more than glad to hand that off to somebody else.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's really rare in any city that a project is going to be appealed all the way to Superior Court. I mean, I think that from there, it could conceivably also move all the way up through the, state legislature and go in front of state Superior Court and even the federal Superior Court.
Wow.
I mean,
We're moving up to big town here now.
if we're
Building precedent and case law at that point.
right.
something that's a question.
Right.
that Needs to be resolved by an ultimate authority.
Yeah.
I can understand it, because I mean, the city is technically a party in the application. So the city in a sense would be appealing to itself. You'd be appealing, the city is a party. and
That's exactly right. So that's exactly,
Appealing to yourself.
well, well,
You know,
so let's take this, so the church example, let's play that out because it really was a tough position that the city staff was put into. And I mean, the city holistically was in quite a rough spot where a decision was appealed to the city council in the decision that was issued the yeah, I think the decision issued by the council at the hearing was averse to what was recommended by city staff and the city attorney. And so then, what happens from there if city staff feel compelled enough and strong enough about the case and about, compliance matters and things like that, what is the city going to do? City staff is going to appeal its own counsel at Superior Court? No, never. And so it's just, it creates strife between council and staff, or it can anyways. It has the capacity to, and there's nothing about that is a positive function for a city.
Because it started with the hearing examiner initially approved it based off like a grandfather
Right.
environmental shoreline. But it was the whole crux of it was the shoreline, was the whole wetland usage, the wetland preservation, for lack of a better term, and the hearing examiner approved it based on the old code, but didn't apply the new code. And what it was determined that the hearing examiner didn't have authority to overrule legislation from the council. And then that's why the city sued the hearing examiner.
No. That's not right. That's not right. You were right to a point. So the hearing examiner issued a decision. The application that was applied for was a critical areas variance. The hearing examiner, that's a decision to be made by the hearing examiner. The hearing examiner reviewed the recommendation by staff, which is a typical practice. The recommendation by staff was to deny the requested critical area variance because it wasn't consistent with the approval criteria. The hearing examiner issued different findings. Largely, his findings were based on an idea that the project was somehow vested to other code.
Yeah.
And so that decision was appealed by city staff, and the appeal hearing body was city council. So you've got city staff appealing the decision of its hired hearing examiner with support of its city attorney going forward to city council, who had to get separate representation, and then issued a hearing or issued a decision on the appeal hearing that favored the decision of the hearing examiner rather than city staff. So city staff still, their recommendation still wasn't held forward by the appeal body. The next level to go from there would be Superior Court via LUPA appeal. And the city staff it's never gonna, I can't imagine ever seeing that happen, that the city staff would take their city attorney and go to Pierce County Superior Court and battle their own city council, who ultimately has been elected as a representation body of its community, and has also passed the ordinances that are steadfastly being applied and interpreted and administered by its staff. I mean, it's nothing but a mess.
That would be insane.
Well, I think that's where we were a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So there has been, a lot of lessons learned for sure, but also just an understanding of best practice. And, best practices certainly just to be able to rely on the training of the quasi judicial branch to be able to enact and to, protect that separation of power from having legislators enact in a judicial capacity. So, allowing the hearing examiner to be able to carry out their role as an appeal body. And then any appeal to that decision would go to an even larger and also trained appeal body. And that would be via LUPA at Pierce County.
In that particular instance, if the appeal body was not the council and it had gone to the Superior Court, would he have upheld what the hearing examiner said or what staff said?
Well, we'll never know.
That's kind of frightening. I mean, that's one of the things, see, about being in a small town, and, people here, they count on, the people they've elected to protect them, to do what we want with our community. And when you have somebody from outside, like the hearing examiner or the Superior Court making decisions for our town, people just don't care for that.
Mm-hmm,
Big government is not something that anybody in Ording is the least bit interested in.
mm-hmm.
So that's interesting, because I know
I could certainly hazard a guess. I have a guess as to what would have happened, but, yeah, we'll never know.
Yeah,
It's rare that a hearing examiner issues a decision averse to the recommendation of staff. And I think that the decision was based off of, it's challenging to read that as a practicing planner and think that there was a lot of substance to the decision. So I think that it might have gone a little bit differently.
yes, from the very first time that the Board of Adjustment was removed from the Planning Commission and given to a hearing examiner, one of the first decisions that particular examiner made really upset a lot of people in town, because he gave these people something that the people knew that they needed to wait, because if they said, because they'd come before our body before and we turned them down. And so they just waited us out. And when we had to have, when the state required us to have a hearing examiner because of our population, we could no longer control it on the Planning Commission. And he just went to them and the hearing examiner gave it to him.
Hmm.
And to me, we considered it spot zoning,
Mm.
and but the examiner let him do it.
Mm.
And we did not want them to do that.
Mm.
So, yeah, he might know what, how the legal system works, but sometimes they're not really in touch with what's really going on in the community. And I was shocked, because I'm thinking, wait a minute, we've been told from the beginning, you can't spot zone. You have got to have a continuation of this thing. You can't just plop down a commercial here because that person wants to be commercial and it's all residential around them. That's not okay. You can't do that.
Mhm.
And that's why we said no. But yeah, I wasn't happy. I wasn't impressed. I thought that didn't work right.
Mhm.
That's not best for our community.
Mhm.
So, I know what's legal and what has to happen, and I understood all that. It didn't make me happy, though.
Mhm.
And as you can tell, I'm still not over it. I have a really.
You
long
hide it
memory.
well.
In one part here on page 16, you use the term shoreline hearing board. We have a shoreline hearing board?
That's not a city function, but that's another example of some really overdue cleanup. So what the way that the code is written right now is to say that every permit that's administered by Title 15 moves through the same appeal process, but that's not right. We have shoreline permits that are administered by Title 15. And those separately move through a shoreline hearings board. That's a state board.
Oh,
And so that's not a function that we have at our city. So the way that this would work for a shoreline permit in Ording, these are administratively decided on permits. The decision gets noticed to the Department of Ecology. So I or Scott would issue a decision, and then it would go on to the Department of Ecology. And if there was a party withstanding, maybe they provided a comment along the way throughout the permit, or maybe it's ecology itself takes that large of an issue with the decision that's issued, then any appeal to that decision moves to the Shoreline Hearings Board, and that's a state board.
wow. Okay. I read that and I'm thinking, that's new. I didn't hear that.
We don't
before.
have that.
Congratulations, that's a new addendum to the planning commission.
Yeah, I didn't. I
Yeah,
wasn't aware of that.
if we're in front of the Shoreline Hearings Board, we are in some hot water.
That wasn't.
Yeah,
I am. I keep trying to remember to put, Post-its on these things so I don't have to go through every page and look where I made marks. I forgot again. I get busy reading and then,
but you only have to go to page,
yeah, I don't think there was anything else,
25.
any other questions I had, because most of it, yeah, you're right. It's just clean up. I had questions about about why we were taking the council off, but you explained that quite well. So
we're only going to page 25 tonight. You don't have to go on.
we didn't go to
Nothing,
25.
Yeah, we did.
No, we
You
didn't.
don't-
We're not doing chapter 13 tonight.
What's that?
That's all
We don't
15.
have a development agreement.
We do
Chapter
provide for
13,
development agreements. There was some
part
context
one.
at the end of the title where,
Oh, 15.
15,
you're seeing some comments between Scott and I where Scott said, do we really need to do this that allow for development agreements? And my position is yes, you want to be able to allow for that. And the city attorney, concurred. A development agreement is entirely voluntary. A city has no obligation to enter into one. Just to provide, if I'll provide a little bit of context here, and you know, anybody let me know if I'm over explaining. A development agreement is a unique is a unique mechanism that a developer will use to enter into a really specific agreement with the city. A city has no obligation to enter into one, but they can choose to. It's typically used for really, really big projects. And the reason why a developer is interested in a development agreement is for a few reasons. One is that they want assurances provided in the agreement that kind of substantiate their tremendous investment. So we're talking like many, many, many millions of dollars being invested into these projects. And so development agreement allows for the city and for the developer to enter into terms and agreements that otherwise wouldn't be necessarily allowed for a development. It also has the ability to be, you know, agreed to for terms, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years that can be valid for and have the opportunity to be amended as needed and things. But the biggest thing is that it is one of the few mechanisms in Washington state that carries vested rights. So if somebody comes in today and says, I want to do a development agreement and the city enters into one, then the terms of the codes and controls that are in place at the time today, at the time of the application completeness, is what carries forward through the entire development agreement's term. And that might be 20 years. How many changes have you seen in 20 years of this code? It's a lot. It's a lot of protection for a developer. And that's what they're interested in because they're investing in something enormous. This can come at a tremendous cost to the cities. If you haven't read the news lately, the city of Cle Elum is bankrupt. They owe $26 million to a developer there because they tried to renege on a development agreement that was entered into in the aughts. And it cost them huge. The developer was successful in front of King County Superior Court, I think, in making a case that the kind of stagnation of the project was intentional by the city and that it cost them millions of dollars. But the city thought that it appears that they thought that they could, kind of maybe strong arm or enact some sort of change. I don't know the particulars. I just know that the city of Cle Elum is looking at $26 million bankruptcy. So, they're big deals. And the reason why a city would want to have it in their code is because it is something that can be entered into between a developer and a city, and you want to be able to have the support of ordinance adopted language to be able to kind of curtail or otherwise, set some framework or boundaries to the terms of the development agreement. For example, 10 years might be an okay development agreement. Maybe 20 years is not really appetizing to the city of Ording. And maybe we want to have a code that specifically says the most that we're doing is 10 years. Because we don't want to be looking at this 15 years from now thinking we made a mistake. We were too giving. Yeah.
Yeah, I see that the attorney suggested 10.
Yeah. I've definitely seen longer. They're sticky business. They can result in some really, really great additions to a community because it, incentivizes big money. If you're a city that wants to be able to really economically, add some pulse to your city, then they can be really beneficial.
Is it normally used for commercial or do you see both residential and commercial?
Both. Yeah, you'll see both.
We had,
Maybe unlikely though, given our current land usage, our
Right.
current zoning.
I would be very surprised if we ever saw it. We don't have enough land I think, to see a development agreement. If we don't even have a UGA right now. If it would take, I think, an adoption of a UGA and then an assignment of that to be incorporated into the city and then a development agreement to form from there. I think it would take all those things. I think it's very unlikely we would see a development agreement here.
We'd all be retired.
yeah,
But
I can't remember what it was called what used to be where the school district bought the property, but it used to be the zone for commercial.
Yeah.
And I've got several plans at home where it was a huge layout of all this, how they were going to lay that commercial out
Mhm.
up there. I don't think it was a development agreement though. It must.
I think even that's too small.
I
And it's a big
can't-
piece of
yeah.
property, but even that I would guess would be too
Yeah.
small for a development agreement. That was in the mixed use town center north zone is what
right.
that was.
Ollie would be like a development agreement.
Kahale would be a development agreement. I would guess that would be, yeah, they've been building that thing and that, it's like when you get that many investors needed at the table to be able to all sign off on yes, like they want assurances and a development agreement provides that.
Yeah, originally it was Cascadia. Patrick Quo was there. He used to come down and meet with us all the time.
Oh,
Really nice man. Yeah, he had great dreams, but
yeah.
and I don't know whatever happened. Yeah, I guess he sold the thing out.
Well, yeah, he sold thousands of acres and
Yeah.
yeah, they're going to have, what's it? I think a population of 30,000 is what they're estimating up there at Tahale after all that. So,
Yeah.
so yeah,
It was quite the plan.
right. These things, they take a lot just to be able to get on paper. And
Yeah.
so,
Well, at one point the reason they were discussing with us is they wanted to connect to our sewer treatment plant.
Mm.
And, we were gonna, add on and support the whole thing. And yeah, it was real interesting. But, I thought that was really interesting, to come off off that hill to our treatment plant. But, because at the time we had one of the top-notch treatment plants. I'm trying to think what the state came back at us and said that we had to improve it. And we were going to be fined and all this kind of stuff. And we hired these camera guys to go through all the side sewers because a lot of our houses, actually, they had rain gutter spouts. People would break holes in their side sewer and route the rainwater into their side sewer. They found that in numerous homes. And a lot of the old pipes were just the old concrete slip togethers, and they were cracked and broken, and they were letting in a lot of just groundwater. And they estimated that we were probably treating 60 to 70% just groundwater in our sewer treatment plant
Hmm.
before. And a lot of people got mad 'cause they had to go in, they sent you a notice telling you, you want to see your video, come on down, but your pipe's broke and you need to replace it.
Mhm.
And so they were replacing pipes all over town.
Mhm.
We replaced ours. It wasn't broke, but we replaced it anyway. So just be done with.
Right.
But yeah, it was, and at the time we had, just state of the art, sewer, treatment there. So yeah, it was a lot of work though, but it was scary sometimes because, they kept threatening us. The state wasn't very nice. Anyway,
Yeah.
any other questions about the Title 15, I mean, chapter? I forget.
Title.
Thank you.
Yep. Of course.
All right, moving right along then, dumpster violations.
Yeah, I think that we're okay on that. We haven't heard anything new. And I know that she and I, Danielle and I, am looking at her. Danielle and I have talked a number of times about the status of how things are looking out there. She also has done a number of times to have to change course coming to work if the Aero Lumber dumpster is too problematic. So been on that, we keep in good contact on that, but it seems to be a non-issue out there for now.
Awesome. And sign code violations? I forget now.
We were pretty active on a couple of matters that came before us for sign codes this month. They were both related to flutter flags that we'd seen out there at L&M Firehouse and then at the kind of temporary fireworks stand that they had set up.
Ah.
So both of those entities separately had their own flutter flags that were set up. And we'd heard, Danielle, I shouldn't take away her thunder, Danielle went about sending out a letter directly to both of those entities. The fireworks stand was immediately amenable. L&M asked some questions and then Danielle went out and captured some photographs about what the content of her messaging was. So we'll take another look at that and follow up if there's still a problem. Those were letters that got sent out last week.
I noticed that the coffee shop still has its
It's a little wood sign.
little wood signboard up,
Yeah.
and of course the teriyaki place still has its banners out.
That might be a matter, Scott and I are trying to work through what the appropriate, kind of course of action is in an address of sign matters. What's the right amount of time to apply towards chasing down sign violations? And, we have a responsibility to administer our code and we have a responsibility to exercise our time, meaningfully and responsibly. And so I think that one idea that we're kind of postulating is kind of universally like sending out mass letters like once or twice a year to everybody that we know to be in violation of the code and try to preempt voluntary compliance that way. Cause, sometimes it really works. I think that maybe L&M has taken care of their issue and we know that the fireworks stand did. I know I went over when that issue was, the Daisy's Boutique out there on the corner of Calistoga and 162. I mean, there are a lot of instances of, pretty swift voluntary compliance. So,
The thing that was interesting on Daisy's
mhm.
is we had approved the sign and those had disappeared. And then 3 days later, they were back all over town again for another week and a half.
Mm, that's too bad.
It's difficult. We don't have a newspaper in town. And so I think new businesses, especially when they're not on the main drag, it's kind of hard for them, they feel like they're not noticed. Nobody knows I'm even here.
Right.
And so, I was going to comment on the new newsletter who's putting that together? The city.
Everybody.
But, come on, Valley and I are kind of heading that as well. So we're not.
The first two editions have been awesome. I don't know how we can get that out to more people in the public, in the community. Cause, especially the last one in June or July, I guess it was June, and it had all the fireworks stuff in it. I thought that was very well explained what the rules are and what the rules, what you're not gonna, and if you're gonna get pulled over, or if you're out there and the cops come by, that you are gonna get in trouble because you're not supposed to be shooting that stuff. And, I thought it was just really well stated and stuff. And I also like the fact that it showed pictures of new staff members that are people that work for the city.
Mm.
I thought that was nice recognition for that, and one of my students, he works for the city, Jake Elder, and I noticed he had another baby, which I like to see. I thought that was great.
What's the distribution of it?
I don't know.
Posted online,
You have to,
City clerk's page.
yeah, you have to go to the city.
Uh,
You have to go to the city website, and that's when we need to be able to, I don't know, maybe print some up and put them at Big J's, and maybe the post office would let us put some there.
Come out in tandem with study session. That way we can kind of brief council on everything going on for month 2. But we can look into distributing them.
Yeah, and just, so people know that it's out there. And then, and always, make note that you can see it online, and if you missed one, this is where you can find it, because I think it was just a wealth of information. And, like I said, we used to always have a newspaper in town since the town was originally, founded back in 1889. The Ording Oracle was here, and there was a newspaper for up until probably, I think the last ones were published the 90s. I don't know if they went into 2000. I'd have to ask Sam that. But, and that's really, and a little town, small town, that's lost art. I mean, all your sports stuff was in there. Who won the high school got the wrestling championship or whatever.
Mhm.
That kind of stuff was always in there. And so, that kind of a newsletter, I think, is really helpful to the community.
Yeah.
And it keeps people tied together. But I was thinking, places people normally go, the post office, we used to always take stuff like that to Copes because everybody went to Copes. And so, but if we could find, a few locations that, they could be set out at, so people would know there is a newsletter,
Mm.
and then start looking for it. If you can't find, if it's all gone, I'll pick it up online. So anyway.
This is kind of a broader topic, but as a city, as a community, and this is everywhere, we need a good medium of communication that's consistent and that's wide reaching. Because you've got a mix of people that get their news from multiple sources. You've got the social media crew, you've got the old school, the print crew, you've got the, people that open their bills. A lot of people like myself, I don't even open my bill because I'm on auto pay. I don't even like my water bill for the city. Couldn't even tell you, it's all on auto pay. I haven't looked at that thing in 2 years.
Mhm.
And I don't get paper because I just burn them. But,
Well-
so that, and communication is really, I don't think any citizen or any business in town willfully wants, I think when you boil it down, I think they all want to do the right thing and, they wanna earn a profit and, they build their tax base. And, I just think communication, can solve a lot. It won't solve everything, but it can solve a lot.
Well, I think, since things have changed and there's so many things now, there's so many options,
Right.
but there also has become more difficult because a lot of people don't know where to look. And I
Right.
prefer they not get their, their news off the blotter.
Well, no, you gotta dig through, so you gotta dig through agenda
'Cause that's
packets of
nightmare.
council meetings, planning commission
Mm.
meetings.
Like-
Minutes, and then, you gotta kind of research, and sometimes I mean, I get it, I'm not trying to suggest extra work. But this is just a whole, I think a lot of communities have the same issue, honestly. It's, sometimes the public needs to be spoon fed.
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
The school district just sent out that brochure it just came in the mail today.
Oh, I haven't checked my mail.
And it was very informative, and it talked about things that we're doing and things that are going on.
Yep.
And perhaps, and it was, and they explained that 75% of the people that live in Ording don't have children in the school district.
Mm-hmm.
But we're sending this out to everyone in the zone, so that everybody's aware of what's going on with our schools. And perhaps something like that, periodically have your little newsletter thing go out to all the residents like the school district just sent out, so that everybody, oh yeah, and in big letters on it, refer them to the online.
Yeah.
And maybe quarterly you send it, you're doing it monthly. So maybe quarterly you send a print thing to everybody so that we can catch up and say, oh, okay, because that way I'm aware that it's happening,
Mhm.
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
I'm
I
not-
wasn't, I wasn't, until I saw it on our email. It came to our email addresses. I didn't even know we were doing a newsletter.
yeah, well, my email has disappeared again, so I'll be in with my computer. as soon as I can.
Machines.
Be nice. I read,
Yeah.
they're good.
The only, I was gonna say, the only other thing, like for the little boutique there, I don't know if she was at the 4th of July thing, but I heard there were, I didn't go because my dog freaks out over that stuff, so I stayed home with her. But I heard that it was just park to park to park with all, so many booths and stuff to see. But, like when we do that, we have a kiosk down there and we're handing out information about the parks or what we're doing. I
Mhm.
think, some of our businesses that are in that same situation, like off the beaten path, that, that kind of thing could be suggested that, oh, they're having an event this weekend. You might want to go down and hand out flyers in the park. And you wouldn't even necessarily have to, rent a kiosk or, rent a spot, just walk through the park and hand, flyers out to people. And, things like, it is kind of hard, and where that shop is, I keep meaning to go. I have not made it there yet, and it's off the beaten path. I don't pass it. And so I don't think about it. And, so she's going to have trouble getting people to come in there. And so much of it's location. I don't know how many where the little Mexican food restaurant drive-through is. We had 4 coffee houses in there before the Mexican restaurant landed. And the first one was a Starbucks. Oh, that'll make it. No, it won't. It's on the wrong side of the street. When you come in the morning, now you can't get back out. You have to turn right and go all the way around the block and come up through the McDonald's flight. So the location makes a huge difference. But anyway, I feel bad for, the little boutiques because that's tough. I did notice that that little boutique next to the jackpot.
Gotta get the Chamber of Commerce.
What is that? Is that a Texaco?
No,
Or
the
the Shell? Yeah, that little Victorian house there, I saw a sign the other day on front of her place that she was reopening. So, but she's got a primo spot right there, just bad parking. Yeah. Anyway, okay, planned absences. Anybody gonna be here and not be here for August?
Well, let's see.
I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. Yeah, the August one is going to be on the 4th of August.
I will be here.
That's my twin's birthday.
It'll just take a couple of weekends. Home renovation project has turned into summer long event.
That's usually the way home renovation
Yeah,
goes.
well, We'll see how the window change goes tomorrow. It's,
Getting a door. We have to order a door and wait for 6 weeks.
Wow.
yeah, we've been working on the windows for a long time and all of a sudden we get this notice that says, oh, you're scheduled for it and and it's like, and if you can't do that one, we're 8 weeks further out. Yeah, okay, fine.
Pass on that. Any interesting reports from the city council meetings?
I think kind of made the main significant one that passed was school zone cameras. The council approved the mayor to enter into a contract with Nova Global. And so I think the goal is to have those up and running in September when school's back in session.
What kind of cameras are they putting in?
So they are ticket enforcement cameras that will only be active when the lights are flashing. So if they go over a certain amount, miles per hour, they will be issued a ticket. But I don't remember if they've decided on 1 month or 2 months, they'll be issuing notices. So it'll say, hey, this would have been a ticket. Be ready, tickets are gonna start on this date. And so
Oh,
you'll get
okay.
it in the mail.
Now, is that for the highway?
Yes.
They're gonna do it on the highway? Cause I know they moved the school zone out past the construction.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes confusing because not with the construction, even before that, because you have the two schools on opposite side of the street. And there was like a school zone for Ptarmigan and the middle school. And then there was a different one for the elementary school. And there was a, gray area in between the two, which I always thought was weird. It should have just been a school zone from A to B and let it go all the way through. So,
I'll have to double check. I know that they will for sure be doing one further north on the highway, but I think they want to see how that goes first because having one kind of down like where Washington is in front of the high school might be a little redundant. But having the main one right there on the highway with that right after that speed change, I think is what they're going to be starting with.
oh, okay. Yeah, that's up by the second entrance to Village Green now. Yeah, okay.
Did they ever get that, the footing issue fixed for the bridge on the west side? I know they was talking about they had to reroute, it failed the pressure test and.
I know that they just did an update during our last council and 4 of the 5 shafts have been repaired. And I think they are they're looking at pricing right now to investigate and redesign the 5th one.
Oh, okay.
So getting close.
Wow.
And then I believe once that's done, all the kind of like subcontracting
Gotcha.
will be done.
Do they have a target finish date?
Spring next year.
Spring?
2026.
Fingers crossed.
Awesome. Okay. So our agenda, we're going to be seeing Title
13.
13, yes. All righty. I don't think there's anything else. Anything else good for the order? Otherwise, I'll entertain an emotion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second,
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? So carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Look
Yeah,
at
of
that.
course.
It's not even 8
Thank you.
o'clock.
That's a lot of.